Hello everyone. So it's a pleasure to be here today in this fabulous venue. I really enjoyed the day so far. So today I'm going to be talking about the future of manufacturing work in this short slot. So I think manufacturing can often be seen as probably maybe a bit of a dirty word when it comes to the planet, sustainability, the environment. I'm going to try and bust that myth. So I work for a company called Booth Welsh, and we have been supporting manufacturing sector clients over the last few years with their sustainable ambitions and really trying to help them tap into that type of thing. So I'm going to talk a wee bit more about our approach here, but also the idea of how tapping into the power of purpose can really help us try and look at how we can create a more prosperous future for us all. So we coined the term Environment 4.0. We're all very much aware of Industry 4.0 and how that's really been shaping industry over the last number of years. And we talk about Environment 4.0 is the idea of really looking at driving digital technology to be able to support business efficiency, cost reductions, but at the same time being able to have that positive planet impact. So really thinking about that simultaneous benefits that can be driven, and really thinking about this idea where it doesn't have to be that trade-off between people, planet and profit. That now can be created simultaneously by thinking about things in this way. And I suppose that was us starting to really take the first steps to becoming more of a purpose-led type of company, and I'll touch on that shortly. So, sustainability and the climate emergency is very much on everyone's radar just now, of course. We'll all have heard of the UN global goals for sustainability, something that we really need to get behind, in that blueprint for a more fair and sustainable future for all. And if we actually look at the benefits of digital technology, we can actually start to see that what we can actually drive through using digital technology can start to actually impact more on planet positive type outcomes. For example, right first time, emission reduction, increased uptime, energy saving, all these things start to move us in the direction of helping us align with those global goals. And here's a snapshot summary of some of the things that we have been doing with some of our clients. We talked a lot about digital twins, AI, etc. So we're very much in that sort of space. I won't give too big a sales pitch, but my boss is sitting over there, so I need to make sure I get the company name in a little bit. For example, using predictive maintenance to really look at reduction of energy, increasing uptime, saving millions of pounds for our client there. Looking at digital twinning before you're creating basically a digital environment before you put any spade in the ground to create that physical environment, massively reducing any potential resources from a construction time point of view. And also looking at remote support. How do we actually support people by digitally rather than having them travel hundreds of thousands of miles, really looking at that carbon reduction impact. So you can see a snapshot of some of those savings there, but really we can see that planet positive impact that we're having side by side with those cost efficiencies and those reductions. And I think if you look at our actual evolution journey as a business, as I said, if you start at the very beginning, Industry 3.0, I think we really thought it was all really about profit maximisation at that point in time. We wanted to make as much money as possible, and that seemed like kind of the most important thing. And after that, we started to move towards Industry 4.0, where we actually looked, personally, we had to really tap into the power of our people and really think about how we engaged our workforce to try and drive that innovation. And that became more important as an actual priority for us. And we really had to try and evolve our culture to suit there. And then as we started looking at environment and having post-pandemic, we really started to understand and appreciate that we had to have, I suppose, more of a focus on protecting the planet, supporting resilience, and actually, again, everyone understanding their impact within that. And that kind of moved us towards I suppose having more of a purpose. You know, we've been through so much disruption over the past few years. We really had to look at refocusing and thinking about how we could better serve our clients and our customers in this really sort of volatile, disruptive type of space. And that became the catalyst really for us sort of resetting where we were going and how we were supporting our clients and our staff and our stakeholders. So at the beginning of this year, we set ourselves a new purpose. So we talk about, through collaboration, we want to engineer a better future. And this is so great to be here today because there's so many positive messages that really fits what we want to actually achieve as a company. So why become purpose-led? You know, there's so many different challenges going on just now, you know, but the idea of creating and building responsible profit is really that way where, you know, you're not just profit at all costs. You know, you're actually thinking about where your profit's coming from, where it's been reinvested, and actually being transparent about that. Brand reputation. Customers are also much more, they view brands who are much more aligned to a purpose and they can be more loyal to them. You know, they also expect that kind of caring attitude. And workforce of the future as well, as we know, are much more purpose-driven. You know, the future workforce are starting to vote with their feet now. If brands aren't actually living up to expectations, they're starting to blacklist and we don't want to work for them because they're not thinking about that wider societal impact. A recent study showed that millennials are more likely, 5.3 times more likely to stay with a company because they have that connection to their purpose. So you can see that whole retention piece and that skills being really important as we start to move through. Business growth as well. As a company, we work in a competitive environment, but we've actually seen a lot of new opportunities to actually take part in and have new connections with different businesses because we're attracting a sort of values mindset, much more of a like-minded basis, which is fantastic, and much more tender opportunities in that sort of area. And I think maximising human capital as well. You know, we've talked a lot about skills, etc. here and thinking about that skills gap. For us, it's really been about capturing hearts and minds by creating a strong purpose of what we do and really thinking about how we can create brand ambassadors and again, untap the full potential and power of our people to actually move forward. And I love that phrase there, purpose does more than make a brand unique, actually shines a light on a business's evolutionary path. And when we look at where we're going, or indeed hurtling towards, I suppose, the direction of the next industrial revolution, Industry 5.0, this is going to be driven by societal change, the need for resilience and actually putting people at the centre of that. We need to rebuild that brighter future that rebalances people, planet and profit all together. And customers and people today are actually seeking more purpose-driven solutions who can actually authentically demonstrate this. So just a wee snapshot of some of the things that we've been doing as a business in this space, how we're actually making that shift and showing that impact in action. So we talk a lot about culture, culture eats strategy for breakfast, I love that phrase. We've been working with a social enterprise called Fuel Change, who are actually looking at tapping into a younger generation. How can they have a voice and a say in actually driving forward their sustainability strategy? You know, actually building that from the ground up and actually making real changes. And again, identifying future leaders and people who are going to take things forward and actually have a say and have a voice around some of the challenges that we're facing today from an environmental point of view. We're also part of the Net Zero Accelerator, and we've actually got audited carbon accounts. So we're part of a programme that allows us to really create a benchmark and a strategy for our carbon reduction. And at the same time, we're building that carbon competency within our business. So again, we can actually talk authentically to our customers because we've been on that journey and we know how to have those conversations with them to support their direction and where they're going with that. And finally, something around community sharing. You know, I think that we need to think more than just ourselves in this whole world today. It's really about how do we extend that influence and how do we actually support each other. So we're looking into, for example, a e-bus, which we can use for our staff, you know, getting to work back and forward, tapping into our local community. They can use that. So it's things like this that are really trying to drive and create that societal value, which we really feel has allowed us to build that sustainable growth and that thought leadership in the right way as part of our purpose. So thank you, everybody. It's been really good to just talk and give you a bit of a flavour of different things that we've been up to. And I think hopefully proving that really being purpose-led is really going to be able to create that more prosperous future for us all together.
Thank you, Amy.
Does it go?
Oh, are there any questions? Yeah. And then the person next to you who I missed last time, I hope you'd get to ask your question to the speaker last time.
Maybe I'll ask one and then pass it over to you. In your presentation, you said Industry 5.0 a few times.
Yep.
So I've looked at this a little bit, and there's different definitions of Industry 5.0. Is
Yep.
there one that you particularly favour? Is that the EU document? Is it?
I quite like the piece that talks about that circular economy piece and the resource efficiency and that need for resilience. I think a lot of them they don't focus as much on that whole values piece as I would like, and I think that's the piece that we need to actually see and make that change, how people have got to be at the centre of it, and that, you know, why are we doing it and how are we creating that wider value for all. But I think it's still quite in its early stages in terms of that research. So yeah, I think there's probably more to come there.
Okay, my question has to do with adoption of technology and transition to different stages of industrial revolution in terms of whether it is Industry 4.0 or Industry 5.0. One of the things that actually determine if organizations would continue this transition is if they can determine that they are actually succeeding with adoption of technology, which brings us to the question of metrics by which they can assess success of these transitions. Now, the question to you as an industry professional, from your own point of view and experience, do you think that there should be a set of metrics, uniform set of metrics for all organizations to assess success, or different organizations should be allowed to have their own set of metrics by which they can assess if they are succeeding with their technology transition?
Yep. I think it's difficult, as I think it would vary depending on industry as well, and you know the different sort of focuses that would be needed. I think there is more of a need for that kind of guidance and that sort of signpost and almost that tick sheet for, you know, your different areas that you need to kind of focus in on, you know, in terms of sort of your people and your culture, you know, your investment, where you're sort of looking to go for it. It's an interesting question, yeah. So I think it does probably depend more on industry, I would say.
Maybe just to add to that, so we as a project, and I think it's the way that not just projects, but many organisations beginning to look at themselves, is around what's your theory of change, and therefore what's the impact map that you're trying to develop. So for instance, something like InterAct sits into the Made Smarter Challenge, which has some big longer term impacts, which would be 2050 sort of long term impacts around sustainability, resilience, well-being, productivity. Now, the challenge comes that sometimes those are competing. You could dial up your green credentials, but it might affect resilience or productivity. But then the steps back from that perhaps focus on outcomes, which are short-term and long-term, which are perhaps more measurable. And before that, you might have things like outputs, which should certainly be measurable. And before that, you might have activities. I think we need to go beyond thinking about, and actually the work of people like Andy Neely and the Centre for Business Performance when he was at Cranfield, obviously he's now at IFM, perhaps moved away from just us looking at metrics because they can really narrow us down, and perhaps there's more of this idea about the theory of change or the impact or strategy map and how that links together. I don't know what you...
Yep, no, I would agree, definitely. Yep.
So, Amy, thank you ever so much.
No problem.
That was really, really insightful. And that's from a dean of a business school that's just about to become a lot more purpose-driven. So you could come and introduce us. So thank you very much.
Yeah, no problem. Very welcome.